If you wouldn't mind kind of telling me, take me through your day today. I understand you were near the building and your husband was actually in the building.
Actually, we live in Triangle, Virginia, which is about between 30 and 35 miles away from D.C., but he goes there every day for work. He's stationed out of D.C. About 8:35 this morning, I called just to make sure he made it to work okay, like I do every day. And he's like, "Well, have you heard the news?" And I'm like, "No, I was just making sure he made it to work okay, like every day." And he's like, "Well, we're in lockdown." He's like, "There's a shooter on the Naval Yard," and I'm just, my stomach just went to just the bottom of its pits, and it was just really hard to deal with. And he brushed off the phone, and he messaged me throughout the day just to make sure that everything was still okay. And it was heart wrenching to know that something like this has happened before, to where it's actually happening to us now. It actually hit home for us.
Mm-hmm.
So but he's still in lockdown as far as I know. I haven't heard from him in a little over an hour or so. But the kids, I know the schools up there, they had like 8 or 9 of them closed within the area.
Mm-hmm.
So, but our kids are down here in school in Triangle, Virginia.
Okay, so they, like you said, were about 30 to 35 miles away.
Right.
Gotcha. And so are you familiar with the building? Kind of describe the building for me, or maybe what you've heard about it.
I'm not really familiar with it. I know it's a really, it's a historic, mark for the military, but it's pretty, it's building upon building upon building, but I know there's a couple of parking lots and stuff like that, but the security is really, really tight up there, and that's what just makes it so shocking to hear, like something that had happened like this, and the description of, from what the news has said, the way that they got on, which is horrible, and, our thoughts and prayers are with the family from the base guard that was taken today, due to that, so.
It's been about an hour ago, which would have been about 1:30 Central Time. What did he tell you then?
They were just still in lockdown. Nobody's, came and told them that they could leave yet. This has been since, just shortly before 8:30 this morning. So most of his day, they've just been confined to their office. They're all together. He's part of MCI Group, the MCI company, in over at the Naval Yard.
Mm-hmm.
So, they were just all together in the office. They were all locked in there, just like you would be like in a lockdown of a school. Mm-hmm. They're not allowed to leave. Nobody's allowed to come in, anything like that.
And so when you spoke with him, did he describe, obviously he said he was on lockdown, but did he describe the moments and maybe the hour after the initial incident?
Just, not too long after it happened, of course, the media and everything had started, to line up outside. They could see outside, but they weren't allowed to do anything. It's just, some of the people there had heard the gunshots. And what's really heart-wrenching is that he literally had just gotten to work, but just a few minutes before it actually happened.
Have you heard anything as far as law enforcement saying, and if they were connected to the building, the potential suspects or anything like that?
Just from what the news is, has said. Other than that, he doesn't even really know. They haven't had any, I guess you could say, like connections to a TV or anything because of being confined to the office. They haven't been able to leave just that area.
And so describe the atmosphere for me. I know you're about 30 to 35 miles away, so what's the atmosphere like just in general around that area?
It's always very, very busy, and especially during that time of day. It's rush hour. It's just jam-packed, car upon car, person upon person walking the streets. And, like they said on the news, it literally looked like a ghost town because of everything that they've had shut down, streets. I know that they shut the airport down there for a little while there, but then everything kind of went back to normal. But as far as I knew, the streets were pretty cleared.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the rest of the day, since this all has happened, what's the atmosphere like now?
It's like I said, as far as I know, it's really pretty much the same. Just because from what the news is saying, there's still at least 1 or 2 suspects that are on the loose for it.
And do you know of any prior, maybe, were there any security issues with this building in the past? I mean, is this the first time there's ever been a real threat like this in that area?
As far as I know, yes, it's the first time that it's ever happened.
Okay, gotcha. And so I guess from this point on, do you have any lingering fears? I mean, really, what is the biggest concern right now? Obviously, your husband is safe, and that's number one. So what's your biggest concern from here on out?
I mean, well, just being in the military in general. I mean, it's always, it's always fearful. You always have, did they leave anything behind? Are they making sure that everything's, come through, that, it wasn't somebody that they were actually, that works with them. I mean, like I said, it's any military family. It's always, you're always scared of what could happen every day.
Mm-hmm. And like you had mentioned, Nate was actually the one that broke the news to you.
Right, and I mean, it wasn't even on the news yet. And he's like, you haven't heard anything? And I'm like, no, I mean, it wasn't even on the news yet. So, I mean, as soon as I get off the phone with him, I mean, it's just like instant tears. It really hit home.
Right. And so describe, what is Nate's typical day like? What is his duty around that building?
I mean, he's part of an NCI company, which they write the test answers and stuff for the tests and stuff that they do throughout the Marine Corps, and I'm sure some of the Navy, has to do it too. But I mean, he's literally in his office from 8 in the morning till sometimes, it can be early as noon. Sometimes it can be late as 4 or 5 in the evening.
Mm-hmm. And from where you live, is it a very military-based community? Are there several families around you in your neighborhood maybe that also had friends or relatives near this building?
I mean, we actually live right outside Quantico here in Virginia. I mean, we live a little bit of ways away, but there's a family of mine that he used to work with at the Marine Corps barracks in D.C. They live up in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is about 10 miles, but they weren't affected nearly as much as, what it is to us.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So, but I mean, it's kind of just us here. It's our first time not living on a military base, which it has its benefits, but then, at times, you want to have that military member, or spouse or whichever that's next to you that's there to reassure you that everything's just going to be okay.